In the quiet town of Bloomington, Indiana, where faith is the foundation of life, a man stood at the pulpit, his words woven with devotion, his presence a symbol of trust. Pastor Jeffrey Richards, beloved leader of Divine Hand Community Church. A man of scripture, a man of counsel, a man, it seemed, above reproach. But behind the stained glass, beyond the Sunday sermons, lay a secret that began in hushed conversations, in locked doors, in whispered prayers that would never reach heaven. She came to him seeking guidance, a troubled soul, vulnerable, searching for light in the darkness. But what she found was something else entirely. The town would learn the truth, but by then it would be too late. What happens when a man who preaches righteousness becomes the very thing he condemns? The answer, buried in deception, would tear apart an entire congregation. And when it surfaced, no one, not even Pastor Richards himself, could stop the reckoning that followed. Divine Hand Community Church, Worship Center. Modest in size, yet grand in presence, its wooden pews have held generations of worshipers. The stained glass windows, catching the morning sun, paint streaks of gold and crimson across the sanctuary floor. This is where people gather on Sundays, where voices rise in unison, where faith is not just spoken, but lived. And at the center of it all, Pastor Jeffrey Richards, a man of 42, broad-shouldered, with the kind of voice that carries through a room, even in a whisper. He is not just a preacher, but a figure of trust, a man who commands respect with the ease of one born to lead. His sermons are woven with scripture, but it is his presence, the steady gaze, the reassuring tone, that draws people in. He stands at the pulpit each Sunday, delivering words meant to uplift, to guide, to heal. He speaks of righteousness, of the path to salvation, of the dangers that come when one strays too far. To his congregation, he is more than a shepherd of faith. He is a man of wisdom, a counselor, a steady hand in times of turmoil. His wife, Margaret, sits in the front pew, her hands folded in quiet devotion. She is the picture of patience, a woman who understands the weight of her husband's responsibilities. Their two children, a boy of 12 and a girl of 8, are well-mannered, their lives shaped by the rhythms of church and home. For years, Divine Hand Community Church has flourished under his leadership. The congregation has grown, new families have joined. There is a sense of peace within these walls. And yet, in the midst of it all, there is Christina Scott. She sits alone in the fourth pew, a woman of 28, her dark hair tucked behind her ear, her hands gripping the edges of her Bible. There is something in her eyes, not quite sadness, not quite fear, but a heaviness that does not belong in a house of worship. Christina was not always this way. Born and raised in Bloomington, she was the only daughter of a devout couple. Her father, Samuel Scott, worked as a mechanic, his hands always stained with oil and grease. Her mother, Anne, sang in the church choir, her voice soft but unwavering. Christina grew up with faith woven into her very being. Sunday mornings in the church pew, Wednesday night Bible studies, prayers before meals. For years, her life followed the path expected of her. She married young, a man named Michael Turner, steady and kind, a construction worker who spent his days building homes and his evenings holding hers together. But marriages, even the ones built on faith, do not always last. In 2012, the cracks began to show. Whispers of arguments behind closed doors, a growing distance. And then one day, the papers were signed, and Christina was alone again. Divorce, in a town like Bloomington, does not go unnoticed. Though no one speaks of it outright, there are glances, quiet nods of sympathy. She returns to Divine Hand Community Church, but something is different now. She no longer lingers after service, no longer sings with the same conviction. The pews had emptied, the last of the congregation filing out into the fading afternoon light. The air inside Divine Hand Community Church was still, the scent of wax and wood lingering in the quiet. Christina Scott remained behind. She stood near the pulpit, hands clasped tightly in front of her, eyes fixed on the open Bible resting beneath the soft glow of the stained glass windows. Pastor Jeffrey Richards had noticed her lingering before. Hesitation in her steps, a pause as if waiting for something, perhaps permission, perhaps courage. He approached her with his usual ease, his voice warm, steady. "Christina, you've been staying behind a lot lately. Is everything all right?" For a moment she said nothing, then a sigh, shallow, barely audible. "I don't know," she admitted. Pastor Richards nodded, his gaze steady. He had seen this before: uncertainty, pain, a soul in need of guidance. He motioned toward the small office just beyond the sanctuary. "Come," he said. "If you'd like to talk, I'm here to listen." She hesitated, but only for a moment, and then she followed. The office was small, lined with bookshelves filled with thick theological texts. A single lamp cast long shadows across the desk. The room smelled of aged paper and coffee gone cold. Christina sat across from him, her hands still tightly clasped. She spoke hesitantly at first, her words carefully chosen. She told him about the loneliness that had followed her divorce, about the silence that filled the spaces where conversation used to be. She spoke of guilt, of wondering if she had failed in the eyes of God. Pastor Richards listened. He nodded at the right moments. His responses were measured, soothing. He assured her that grief was natural, that faith was tested in times of hardship. He told her that God had a plan, that she was not alone. Christina left that first session with a feeling of relief. A weight lifted just slightly. One meeting became two. Two became a weekly appointment. At first, the sessions were structured, discussions of faith, prayer, scripture meant to comfort, to strengthen. But with time, something changed. The meetings stretched longer. What had once been 30 minutes after Sunday service became an hour, then two. Soon, Christina was coming on Wednesdays, then Fridays. She told herself it was normal. After all, she had sought help, and Pastor Richards was helping her. It was subtle. At first, the discussions remained within the boundaries of faith, but soon the topics grew more personal. "You seem troubled today," he remarked one evening, his voice softer than usual. "Would you like to talk about something other than Scripture?" Christina hesitated, then nodded. And so she spoke, about the nights when the silence of her home felt unbearable, about the whispers in church, the looks, the questions she was too tired to answer, about Michael, her ex-husband, and the ache that still lingered despite her prayers. Pastor Richards listened, leaning forward, his hands clasped before him. "You deserve to be happy, Christina," he told her. She nodded, unsure why his words unsettled her. It was an evening in early autumn when Christina first noticed the messages. A text, brief, seemingly innocent. "You seem sad today. I hope you're all right." Then another, "Thinking about our conversation. Let me know if you need to talk." Then another. It was nothing inappropriate, nothing that could be questioned outright. And yet Christina felt a quiet unease settle in. She told herself it was concern. Pastors care for their flock. He was simply checking in, offering support. And still, she did not tell anyone. Over the following weeks, the pattern deepened. Christina's sessions extended well past the scheduled times. What had once been quiet, structured meetings in the pastor's office now shifted to long conversations in the dimly lit church hallways, to phone calls that stretched into the night. "You don't have to face this alone," he told her one evening. "If you ever need me, I'm always here." His words lingered. The line between spiritual counsel and personal connection began to blur. Christina found herself waiting for his messages, checking her phone more often than before. And then she stopped confiding in others. Her family noticed first. At Sunday lunch, her mother Ann reached across the table, covering Christina's hand with her own. "You've been quiet lately," she said. "Is everything all right?" Christina forced a smile. "I'm fine, Mom. Just been busy." Her mother studied her, but did not push. But others noticed too. At church, Christina no longer mingled after service. She no longer sat with her old friends. Instead, she lingered near the pastor's office, waiting. At Divine Hand Community Church, people speak in hushed tones, concern wrapped in politeness. Someone saw Pastor Richards and Christina in the parking lot, speaking in low voices, long after service had ended. Another noticed his eyes searching for her in the congregation, his gaze lingering just a moment too long. And then there was the favoritism. Christina's name began to appear in the church bulletin more frequently, assigned special roles and events, given tasks that kept her close to the pastor. A woman from the choir, Martha Caldwell, voiced it first. "Pastor Ritz has taken quite the interest in Christina Scott, hasn't he?" A friend agreed. "Seems that way." But nothing more was said. Not yet. One evening, Christina sat at her kitchen table, phone in hand, staring at the latest message from Pastor Richards. "It's late," she murmured to herself. It was past 11 o'clock, yet here was another text, words of reassurance, yet too personal. She hesitated, then dialed the only person she trusted outside the church. The rain fell in a steady rhythm against the window pane, soft and unrelenting. Outside, the streets of Bloomington were empty, the last of the streetlights flickering in the damp night air. Inside a dimly lit room, a phone vibrated against a wooden nightstand. A message. "Are you awake?" Christina Scott stared at the screen, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The name at the top of the message thread, Pastor Jeffrey Richards. She hesitated, then typed. "Yes." A pause. A full minute passed. Then another vibration. "I need to see you." Christina swallowed hard. She glanced at the clock, 11:47 p.m. The weight of exhaustion pressed against her chest, but the thought of him waiting, wanting to talk, pulled at something deep inside her. Her hands trembled slightly as she typed back. "Where?" A single reply. "Same place." The church was dark when she arrived, the parking lot deserted. She parked her car near the rear entrance, her heart pounding. The door was already unlocked. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of candle wax and old wood. The hallway stretched in eerie silence, every footstep absorbed by the heavy carpeting. Pastor Richards stood in the doorway of his office. The dim glow from the desk lamp cast half his face in shadow. He did not speak immediately. Instead, he stepped aside, allowing her in. The door clicked shut behind her. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then he reached for her hand. Christina did not pull away. The moment unfolded in excruciating slowness. His fingers brushed against her cheek, tracing the edge of a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. The air between them was heavy, charged with something unspeakable. "I don't know what I'm doing anymore," she whispered. His reply was almost inaudible. "Neither do I." And yet he did not stop, nor did she. What had begun as late-night confessions in the pastor's office became something more. The meetings moved beyond the walls of Divine Hand Community Church, a motel on the edge of town, a place where the parking lot remained half full at all hours of the night, where no one asked questions, where people came and went unnoticed. Room 214. Here, away from the congregation, away from the watchful eyes of his wife, Jeffrey Richards was not Pastor Richards. Here, he was simply a man. Their encounters followed no pattern, sometimes after evening service, sometimes in the quiet of an afternoon when no one would suspect. Christina began keeping secrets she never thought she would keep. Her car parked behind the motel instead of in front. A scarf wrapped around her head when she entered. Receipts crumpled and shoved deep into her purse. And yet, the guilt did not come immediately. Not in the stolen moments. Not in the whisper-soft words exchanged in the dark. It came later. When she returned home, when she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, when her heart pounded at the sound of a text message, wondering if it would be him or worse, if it would be someone who knew. Christina's confession in her diary entry. On November 17, 2013, 2:14 a.m., recorded her saying, "I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see his face. I hear his voice. I feel his hands. I tell myself it isn't wrong, that love isn't wrong, that wanting him isn't wrong. But then I wake up and it's morning and the weight of it is suffocating me. I sit in church and I watch him stand at the pulpit, and I wonder if anyone else notices how his voice catches when he looks at me. I wonder if Margaret notices. I wonder if God is watching me. And if he is, I wonder how much longer I have before I can't ask for forgiveness anymore." An affair like this, hidden in the shadows, requires careful maintenance, and maintenance requires resources. Christina never asked who was paying for the motel rooms, but in time she noticed the envelope. A plain white envelope tucked into the side pocket of her purse, found after one of their meetings. Inside, cash. Christina's breath caught as she counted. $500. A note folded in half. "For anything you need. No questions. No signature. No explanation." She should have questioned it. But she didn't. It wasn't until weeks later, when the church treasurer, Eleanor Caldwell, voiced a concern about unaccounted withdrawals from the church's discretionary fund, that Christina realized where the money had come from. It had come from the offering plate. From the very people who sat in the pews every Sunday, listening to Jeffrey Richards preach about morality and righteousness. Christina felt the sickness crawl through her. She stared at the money, fingers gripping the bills tightly. Then slowly she put them back in the envelope and tucked it into her nightstand drawer. She told herself it was temporary, that one day they would stop, that one day they would walk away. But walking away was never part of the plan. It was mid-December when Christina's hands began to tremble, when she sat in the pews and felt her skin crawl under Margaret Richards's gaze, when she opened her Bible and found herself unable to read the words. One evening, after another late-night meeting, she pulled her phone from her pocket and stared at the text message thread. Dozens of messages from him, some simple, some devastating. I need you. I can't stop thinking about you. I don't know what I'd do if this ended. Christina's chest tightened. She scrolled back further and further, past the weeks, past the months, to the very first message. Are you awake? She swallowed hard. Her hand hovered over the screen, her breath shallow. And then, for the first time, she deleted the message. Not all of them, just that one, just the first one. As if erasing the beginning could change the inevitable ending. The air was crisp on a Sunday morning in late January, a thin layer of frost clinging to the bare branches outside Divine Hand Community Church. Inside, the congregation gathered as they always had, filling the wooden pews, voices merging in quiet greetings and hushed conversations. Yet beneath the familiar routine, something had changed. Eyes lingered for a second too long. Whispers faded into silence when certain names were spoken. An undercurrent of unease had settled among them. It had begun slowly. A comment here, a glance there. The kind of doubt that slips into the mind unnoticed until it is impossible to ignore. And for Martha Caldwell, the church secretary, it had become impossible to ignore. Martha had been with Divine Hand Community Church for over 20 years. She had seen pastors come and go, watched congregations shift and grow, but she had never seen anything quite like this. At first, it was the late-night meetings, the soft click of the pastor's office door closing long after service had ended. The way Christina Scott would leave the building just minutes later, her head down, her steps hurried. Then there were the phone calls. The office phone would ring well past working hours. When Martha answered, the voice on the other end was always the same. Christina. Her tone hushed, her words clipped. Is Pastor Richard still there? Martha would hesitate. No, dear. He left a while ago. A pause, then a quiet, okay, before the line went dead. And yet, the very next morning when Martha arrived to open the church, Pastor Richards's office light would still be on, the chair slightly askew, the faint scent of coffee lingering in the air. He had never left. It was Emily Hartman, Christina's childhood friend, who spoke first. One evening over coffee at the Bluebird Cafe, she sat across from Christina, watching as she stirred her drink absently, her eyes distant. You're not yourself lately, Emily said. Christina barely looked up. I'm fine. Emily set down her cup. No, you're not. A long pause. Christina, is something going on with you and Pastor Richards? Christina's fingers tightened around her mug. Why would you ask that? Emily exhaled, choosing her words carefully. Because you disappear for hours at a time, because you look exhausted, because when you say his name, your whole face changes. Christina said nothing. Emily leaned in, her voice quieter now. Tell me the truth. Christina's breath hitched. Her gaze dropped to the table. It's complicated. Emily swallowed hard. Does Margaret know? Christina flinched. And Emily knew, without another word, that her friend was in far deeper than she had ever intended to be. The rumors might have remained whispers, speculation confined within the church walls, if not for Jim Avery. Jim had worked as a night clerk at the Evergreen Motel for nearly a decade. He rarely paid attention to the guests who came and went, but one night in early February, he saw something he could not forget. A car parked in the back lot, a familiar car. Jim recognized it immediately. Pastor Richards' silver Toyota Camry. It had been parked there before, always late at night, always in the same spot. But this time was different. Because just as Jim was stepping out for a cigarette, the motel door opened, and Christina Scott stepped out, her coat clutched tightly around her, her hair slightly disheveled. She looked over her shoulder, and then Pastor Richards followed. He didn't see Jim standing in the shadows, but Jim saw him. And at that moment, the rumors became something more. Christina had known from the moment she first crossed the line that this could not last, and yet it had. Now the walls were closing in, the questions, the lingering glances, The night spent staring at her phone, heart pounding. One evening, she made her decision. She met Pastor Richards in his office, the door locked behind them. "We need to stop." His expression barely changed. "Christina." "No," she cut him off, her voice shaking. "I can't do this anymore. People are starting to notice." He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Christina, listen to me." "I am listening," she snapped, "and this has to end." Silence, then softly, "Do you want this to end?" She swallowed hard. Of course she did. Didn't she? His hand reached for hers, he murmured. "It's not that simple." Her breath caught, because deep down, she knew he was right, and she hated herself for it. 3 days later, an email arrived in Martha Caldwell's inbox. There was no subject line, no sender's name, just a single attachment, a forwarded message. From Pastor Jeffrey Richards to Christina Scott. Date February 14th, 2014. Time 12:32 a.m. "I can't stop thinking about last night, about the way you looked at me, about the way you said my name. Tell me this isn't wrong, Christina. Tell me I'm not losing my mind. I need to see you soon." Martha's heart pounded. She stared at the screen, her hands cold, her breath shallow. Her eyes flicked to the name in the from field. Pastor Richards. For a long moment she did not move. Then slowly she pressed print. The church doors opened at sunrise that Sunday morning, the winter air sharp and unforgiving. As the congregation arrived, they did not notice the envelope resting on the church steps. Not at first, but when Margaret Richards approached the entrance, her heel brushed against something. She paused, glancing down. A plain white envelope. She bent, picked it up, turned it over. No return address, no name, only a single handwritten note. A man of God should not be a man of lies. Heart pounding, she tore it open. Inside, printed copies of the emails. Margaret's breath caught, her vision blurred, her husband's words in black and white, a truth she had not been prepared to face. As the bells rang out for the morning service, she stood frozen on the church steps, the wind pulling at the papers in her hands. And for the first time since their marriage began, she did not step inside the church. The air inside Divine Hand Community Church was different now. The familiar warmth, the sense of unity, had been replaced by something else. Silence, heavy, unsettling. On that Sunday morning, the congregation sat stiffer than usual, hymn books held too tightly, eyes flickering toward the pulpit. They were waiting for answers, for an explanation. But Pastor Jeffrey Richards was not there. For the first time in over a decade, the pulpit stood empty. The church reacts. The news had spread in whispers at first, a murmur between two church elders, a passing comment from Martha Caldwell, who had read the emails firsthand. By midday, whispers had turned to questions. By nightfall, questions had become accusations. And by the next morning, the entire congregation knew. The head deacon, Robert Evans, had been the one to make the call. A closed-door meeting was held in the church office, the elders sitting in a tense circle. At the center of the table, the envelope, the emails, and a decision to be made. By Monday afternoon, an official statement was released. Pastor Richards has taken a leave of absence, effective immediately, as the church leadership conducts a formal review of recent allegations. No specifics, no direct mention of Christina Scott, but the congregation understood what it meant. Christina Scott had not been seen in church since the morning Margaret Richards found the envelope. Her usual spot in the fourth pew remained empty. For days her phone remained off. Calls went unanswered. It was Emily Hartman who finally found her. She was at home, blinds drawn, her voice hoarse from days of silence. "They know, don't they?" Christina asked, though she already knew the answer. Emily sat across from her, studying the friend she had known since childhood. "They know." Christina exhaled, pressing her hands to her face. "What do I do?" Emily's voice was quiet, firm. "You tell the truth." The next day, Christina walked into the church office, her hands trembling, her heart hammering against her ribs. The elders sat before her, expressions unreadable. She took a breath, and then she told them everything. The messages, the meetings, the motel room. She left nothing out. And when she finished, the room remained silent for a long time. By Thursday, the official announcement came. Pastor Jeffrey Richards had resigned from Divine Hand Community Church. The letter, read aloud by Deacon Robert Evans, was carefully worded. "I have failed in my responsibilities to this congregation, to my family, and to my faith. For this, I take full accountability and will be stepping down from my role as pastor, effective immediately. Yet again, there was no mention of Christina Scott, no direct confession, only vague acknowledgement. But the damage had been done. The following Sunday, Margaret Richards and her 2 children were absent from church. They did not return. For years, Jeffrey Richards had been a man of standing, a leader, a counselor, a figure of trust. Now his name was spoken in hushed tones, his presence erased from church bulletins, his face removed from the walls of the sanctuary. His wife and children left town within the month, moving to her sister's home in Ohio. And Jeffrey Richards himself, he vanished. No farewell sermon, no final words to his congregation, just an empty pulpit in a town filled with unanswered questions. Weeks passed. The scandal, though still fresh, had begun to settle, and then another letter appeared. No return address, no signature, just a single line typed on plain white paper, "Ask about Northfield." It was Martha Caldwell who saw it first. She turned the note over, her pulse quickening. Northfield, a small town 2 hours north of Bloomington. A town where Jeffrey Richards had served as pastor before coming to Divine Hand Community Church. A town where another church had once lost a pastor under sudden, unexplained circumstances. She stared at the note for a long time, and then slowly she folded it in half, a terrible realization settling in. The doors of Divine Hand Community Church remained open. The sermons continued. The congregation gathered as they always had. But something had changed. The name Jeffrey Richards was no longer spoken. His image, once displayed proudly in the hallway alongside the pastors before him, was gone, erased from the church's history. Yet his absence did not erase the questions. How had a man so trusted, so revered, fallen so completely from grace? How many had known or suspected but chosen to look away? And the final, most unsettling question of all, was Christina Scott truly the only one? For those within the congregation, the scandal became a lesson, a quiet warning that even the most trusted figures can hold secrets. How many times does history repeat itself before we start asking the right questions? If you believe that stories like these deserve to be told, if you believe that power, when left unchecked, can lead to corruption, then don't stay silent. Subscribe for more true crime investigations that uncover the hidden truths behind the people we trust the most. Like this video if you believe stories like Christina's need to be heard. Comment below. Do you think justice was truly served? Or was this just another cover-up waiting to be forgotten? The truth is out there, but only if we choose to see it.